Many musicians struggle with ear training for months, sometimes years, and never make the progress they want. But what if I told you the reason isn't lack of effort? It's the mistakes most people don't even know they are making. If you're new here, I am Leonardo, the creator of the Use Your Ear method, which has helped over 2,000 musicians improve their ear training. Unlike interval training, which leads most people to overthink, this method helps you deeply connect with the feel of notes and chords, so you can recognize them faster and more intuitively. It's even rated excellent on Trustpilot. But before I developed this method, I struggled a lot with ear training myself. And now, after helping thousands of students other than myself, I want to share what I've learned so you can save countless hours by avoiding the top 6 mistakes musicians make. The biggest problem I see? People trying to run before they can walk. An important point I want to come across is that ear training skills develop like a pyramid. You can't get to advanced skills if you don't have the more basic skills in place. I see lots of students trying to go straight to melodic dictation and chord recognition tasks when they still have difficulties matching pitch or singing the scale or other more basic tasks. This won't work because pitch matching and singing the scale are abilities that are required for successfully performing melodic dictation or chord recognition tasks. Similarly, I see lots of beginner musicians approaching ear training mainly through the interval approach. If you're a beginner musician and you focus on recognizing intervals, practicing interval exercises, this is going to hold you back. And I see this happening again and again with lots of students, like Sandra, for example. The issue with that is that interval ear training is not a good approach for beginners, and I'll talk more about this later in the video. Another very common mistake I see happening is lots of musicians not knowing the thought processes that they should adopt when practicing a certain ear training task. For example, I see lots of students trying to approach melodic dictation or chord recognition tasks without recognizing the tonic at first. So without even trying to understand the scale in which the music is playing in. We need to know the tonality of the music because the tonality of the music gives us a framework, which is the scale, that can allow us to orient ourselves and recognize notes and chords much more intuitively and quickly. If we don't have this framework, we get lost really quickly. For example, it happened to me more than once that I was working with students who are very good at recognizing intervals in the exercises. But then, if I played a melody to them, they weren't able to recognize even one single note. But the interesting thing is that as soon as I told them, well, just apply this thought process. Just recognize the tonic of this melody, the tonality in which the melody is playing in, sing the scale, and then try to identify which scale degrees are being played in the melody. As soon as I told them this, they were able to recognize the melody immediately. It was stunning because they already had those skills. It's just that they weren't able to use them because they were literally using a thought process that was holding them back. I'm not kidding. Check out these comments here. This thing has happened multiple times. Anyway, the point is that applying the correct thought processes is vital if you want to improve in your training. Here's another very common and very sneaky mistake. Do you think that learning songs by ear by using your instrument will improve your ear? Think again. Actually, most people who practice learning songs by ear with their instrument use a trial and error approach, like this. Okay, let's try to find the notes. Nope. That's the first note. If you use a trial and error approach, you will only practice pitch matching skills. You're just learning to match the pitches you hear in the song onto your instrument. This is not going to train any other of the very many and important ear training skills that are required to recognize songs by ear alone. And this won't allow you to experience all the very important benefits that come with proper ear training, like improving your intonation in playing, singing, like just improving your musicality, being able to transcribe a melody or a chord progression on the spot, being able to imagine a melody and sing it or playing it immediately, same with a chord progression, etc. These skills are not going to be even touched by using a trial and error approach. Unfortunately, results in your training and the benefits you experience in your training are directly related to the quality of your practice and the thoughtfulness of your practice. Here's the fourth mistake. Well, I know that singing the scale is boring. No one wants to sing the scale just for the sake of it. But singing the scale is the secret sauce to effective ear training. And I'm not kidding. It's the most important thing that beginners and also intermediate students sometimes should do. Because singing the scale indicates the ability to create a representation of the tonality in our mind. Basically, by learning to sing the scale, we memorize, we internalize the structure of the tonality. And this is the point. All music you will ever hear has a tonality at any given time. And so has a scale at any given time. And the structure of the scale allows us to create a framework that then we can use to orient ourselves in recognizing notes and chords within that scale. And this is the best, easiest way to recognize music. Same for chords. Not only that, the scale is what allows us to connect to the feelings of notes and chords, because each scale degree has a very specific feeling. For example, the first degree of the major scale has the same feeling no matter we're in the key of C major, A major, G major, whatever. It always has the same feeling, and the same for all other degrees. This means that familiarizing with the scale is the first step in actually experiencing these feelings. And then being able to internalize these feelings so that we can recognize them, and we can recognize notes and chords very quickly, intuitively, and effortlessly, just by recognizing how they feel. This concept is crucial to understand this next point. If you can't sing the scale, you don't have a clear perception of the tonality. This means that the feelings of the notes and the chords are blurred, are fuzzy. You can't really experience and familiarize with them precisely enough to then be able to recognize them by ear just by listening to the feeling they have. This explains why singing the scale, as boring as it sounds, is the most important thing you can do in your training. You should be able to sing the scale without even thinking. Then you can start practicing melodic dictation, chord recognition, and all other sorts of stuff. But if you can't sing the scale, just don't practice anything else, because it won't make any sense. And this made all the difference in the world for the development of my ear training skills. And I see the same thing happening for all my students. Like Mauro, for example, who's getting 0 out of 10 in the melodic dictation exam at his conservatory. And then as soon as we started working together and I give him this exercise, the first exercise on how to learn to sing the scale, and he started improving quite quickly and learned quite quickly to sing the scale, then everything unlocked for him. And to my surprise, in just 3 weeks, he went from 0 out of 10 to 9.5 out of 10 in the melodic dictation exam at his conservatory. Just check out his video.
Grazie alle lezioni di Use Your Hair ho avuto possibilità di superare l'esame, e non solo il secondo anno ma anche il terzo anno, quando in realtà fino a 3 settimane fa prendevo 0 o meno di 0 al dettato melodico perché avevo problemi nell'ascolto della musica e delle note musicali. Ho fatto l'altro ieri l'esame di secondo corso e ho preso 9, e il dettato melodico e ho preso 9,5, e per come sono stato bravo il professore mi ha proposto anche di fare un altro anno, c'è l'esame del terzo corso, e ho passato anche quest'oggi grazie al videocorso che ho fatto con Use Your Hair.
You won't become fluent in a language just by practicing on a textbook, right? You know that. Same thing for your training. You won't become a master in your training just by practicing exercises. You need to work on real music. And I see lots of students making this mistake. It's kind of the opposite of like students who are practicing learning songs by ear through a trial and error approach. There are students who never apply their skills onto real music. And this is obviously an issue because in order to get good at real music, you need to practice on real music. Of course, I wouldn't suggest to practice on real music for very beginners who still need to learn matching pitch and singing the scale. But once you start recognizing notes and chords by ear alone, even simple stuff, even like 3 notes melodies and like 1 4 5 1 chord progression, it's good enough for you to start applying your skills on real music. Of course, you should start on very simple music like nursery rhymes, very simple pop music, folk music, country, and things like that. Of course, just don't go ahead and practice on the craziest jazz piece because you're not going to understand anything by doing that. But you should practice on real music as soon as you can. By the way, if you want to learn to apply your training skills to real music, but you struggle with this, you don't know where to start, we just launched an app that allows you to practice your training on full songs with complete arrangements. We're receiving lots of positive feedback and many users liking it already. Just check it out. It's a free download, link in description. The last but most common mistake of all is trying to recognize notes and chords by intervals instead of by feeling scale degrees or chord degrees. I've already introduced some of the concepts that explain why this is an issue. In order to be able to recognize notes and chords quite quickly and intuitively, we can't rely mainly on calculating intervals because it won't be intuitive and fast enough to be applied in real musical situations. What really allows us to develop very intuitive skills is feeling the notes and the chords. Most musicians vastly overlook the importance of scale degrees and chord degrees in favor of recognizing and calculating intervals. I was one of those musicians. I have been one of those musicians for 10 years, and I didn't get anything from it. I didn't go anywhere with it. As soon as I switched and I actually started to think about scale degrees and chord degrees, that's when things shifted radically for me, and I see the same thing for all my students. I think there won't be even one of them that will disagree with this statement. Scale degrees are vastly more important than intervals. And I know this is kind of the opposite of what everyone else is saying, but based on my experience, this is 100% the truth. I think we have thousands of people that will support this statement. But if you're still not sure on why scale degrees are much better than intervals, I made this video up here where I explain in depth why interval exercises are detrimental for beginners and intermediate students while might be beneficial for advanced musicians. Check it out.